The alley reeked of damp asphalt and fear as Malik sprinted through the narrow passage, his sneakers slapping against the ground. His heart pounded in his chest, adrenaline mixing with the unease he carried every day in his neighborhood. He had no business being out this late, but his little sister had begged him to grab her favorite chips before the corner store closed. He froze mid-step as the sound of gunfire cracked through the air. A woman's scream followed, sharp and desperate, before being silenced. Malik ducked instinctively, pressing himself against the wall, eyes darting toward the source. He wasn't brave. He didn't want to be involved. Staying invisible was his survival strategy in a world where sticking your nose where it didn't belong could get you killed. But then he saw her. A figure stumbled into view under the flickering streetlight. A woman in a police uniform, blood staining her shirt. She clutched her swollen belly, her breaths coming in shallow gasps. She dropped to her knees before collapsing completely, her weapon clattering to the ground. Malik's instinct screamed for him to stay hidden. Helping her would mean exposing himself to whoever did this. Worse, it would mean siding with a cop, an unforgivable act in his world, where trust and authority was as scarce as clean streets. But she wasn't just a cop. She was a pregnant woman, bleeding out, vulnerable. His mother's voice echoed in his mind, asterisk. If you can do good, Malik, you do it. Even when it's hard. Asterisk. He crept closer, scanning the alley for any signs of the shooter. His hand shook as he crouched beside her. Her eyes fluttered open, clouded with pain but filled with desperation. Help me, she rasped, her voice barely audible. My baby, save my baby. Her words hit him like a blow. He hesitated, torn between his fear and the weight of her plea. Finally, he yanked his phone from his pocket, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. There's an officer down, he said quickly, giving the dispatcher the location. He hung up before they could ask any questions. The officer's hand shot out, grabbing his arm with surprising strength. Take this, she said, pressing something small and metallic into his palm. It was a flash drive, slick with her blood. What? He started, but she cut him off. They'll kill us both if they find this. Protect it. Please. Her head lolled back as she slipped into unconsciousness, her grip on his arm going slack. Malik stared at the flash drive, his mind racing. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. He didn't wait for the paramedics or the cops to arrive. He slipped the flash drive into his pocket and disappeared into the shadows, running as fast as his legs could carry him. Back home, he locked the door behind him, his breath ragged. His little sister, Layla, looked up from the couch, her face lighting up. Did you get my chips? She asked innocently. He stared at her, the weight of the evening pressing down on him. His hand shook as he pulled the blood-streaked flash drive from his pocket. He didn't answer her. Instead, he went to his room, shut the door, and sat on his bed, staring at the small object that now felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Malik didn't know what was on it, but he knew one thing. His life, and maybe his family's, was about to change forever. The next morning, Malik woke to a buzz of activity outside his window. Peeking through the curtains, he saw a patrol car parked on the curb and 2 officers talking to his neighbors. His stomach sank. He knew they were looking for him, the kid who helped their injured colleague, but he wasn't ready to explain anything, not to them, not to his family. He slid the flash drive out of his pocket and stared at it again, wondering why it felt like a ticking bomb. He had no idea what was on it, but he could feel its importance in the weight of the officer's dying plea. In the kitchen, his mother was already moving through her morning routine, packing lunches and trying to wrangle Layla, who was refusing to eat her cereal. Malik's older brother, Jermaine, sat at the table, scrolling on his phone, oblivious to the tension brewing. Malik hesitated, debating whether to share what had happened. Before he could decide, there was a loud knock at the door. His mother answered it, and Malik's breath caught when he saw two uniformed officers standing there. They asked about the shooting and whether anyone in the family had witnessed anything. His mother's voice was steady as she told them no, but Malik saw her eyes flicker toward him, questioning. "Your boy didn't happen to be near the scene last night, did he?" One of the officers pressed, his tone polite but firm. Malik stepped forward before his mother could respond. "No, sir. I was at home all night." The officer studied him for a long moment, then nodded and handed his mother a card. "If you think of anything, give us a call, and let us know if you see anything unusual in the neighborhood. The gang involved in this, they don't play around." When the door closed, his mother rounded on him. "What's going on, Malik?" "Nothing," he lied, the flash drive burning a hole in his pocket. "I was just curious what they wanted." Jermaine smirked. "Cops don't just show up for no reason. You sure you're not into something, little bro?" "Back off, Jermaine," Malik snapped, storming to his room. He slammed the door behind him, frustration boiling over. He wanted to tell someone, but he couldn't shake the fear of what might happen if he did. Later that day, Malik decided to take a closer look at the flash drive. Borrowing Jermaine's laptop, he locked his door and inserted the device. A folder popped up, filled with encrypted files. Malik didn't understand much about computers, but one file name stood out, Iron Fangs _internal. His chest tightened. The Iron Fangs were the gang that ruled his neighborhood, and everyone knew not to cross them. They had eyes everywhere, ears in every corner. Malik's father used to warn him about them before he disappeared years ago. Now, the flash drive in his hand seemed to hold something they wanted badly enough to kill for. A sudden pounding on his door made him jump. "Malik!" Jermaine shouted. "What are you doing in there?" Panicking, Malik yanked the drive from the laptop and shoved it into his pocket. "Nothing. Just homework." Jermaine didn't buy it, but he didn't push. Malik spent the rest of the day on edge, every shadow and every loud noise making him flinch. That night, as he walked home from a part-time shift at the grocery store, a black SUV slowed beside him. The window rolled down, revealing a man with a scar running down his cheek. "You Malik?" the man asked, his tone casual but menacing. "No," Malik lied, quickening his pace. "Don't lie to me, kid," the man said, his voice dropping. "We know what you've got. Give it to us, and we won't hurt your family." Malik froze, his pulse racing. They knew. Somehow, they knew. He considered handing over the flash drive, ending the nightmare right there, but the officer's words echoed in his mind. Asterisk. "They'll kill us both if they find this." Asterisk. Instead of answering, Malik bolted. He heard the SUV's tires screech as it turned to follow him, but he ducked into an alley and vaulted over a chain-link fence, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. He ran until his legs burned, finally collapsing in the shadows behind an abandoned warehouse. As he sat there, heart pounding, he realized there was no way out of this without confronting the truth. He had to figure out what was on the flash drive, and why it was worth so much trouble. More importantly, he had to figure out how to protect his family from the storm that was closing in around them. Malik sat on his bed, staring at the flash drive like it was some cursed artifact. He had no idea how to decrypt the files, and asking anyone for help felt like painting a target on his back. The memory of the man in the SUV still sent chills through him, and every creak of the house made him jump. Dinner that night was tense. His mother kept glancing at him between bites of food, clearly sensing something was off. Layla was her usual talkative self, oblivious to the undercurrent of anxiety. Jermaine, on the other hand, seemed to be watching Malik closely, his suspicion growing with every passing moment. "You've been acting weird all day," Jermaine said suddenly, breaking the silence. You sure you're not mixed up in something? Malik hesitated, debating whether to tell him. He wanted to trust his brother, but Jermaine wasn't exactly known for his discretion. Instead, Malik deflected. Just school stuff. It's nothing. Jermaine didn't look convinced, but their mother cut in before he could push further. Let the boy eat in peace, Jermaine. Not everything's a conspiracy. After dinner, Malik decided he couldn't keep avoiding Officer Daniels. He needed answers, and she was the only person who could give them to him. With his hoodie pulled low over his face, he made his way to the hospital where she was recovering. When he slipped into her room, she looked up, her face pale but alert. Her hand instinctively went to her stomach, protective even in her weakened state. You shouldn't be here, she said, her voice low. I didn't know where else to go, Malik admitted, pulling the flash drive from his pocket. What's on this? Why are they coming after me? Daniel's expression darkened. She motioned for him to close the door before speaking. That drive contains a list of names, politicians, law enforcement, and business leaders, all tied to the Iron Fangs. It's proof of a network of corruption that goes deeper than you can imagine. Malik's stomach sank. He knew the Iron Fangs were dangerous, but this was on another level. Why give it to me? I'm just a kid. I can't do anything with this. You were there, she said simply. I didn't have a choice. If they found it on me, I'd be dead, and so would my baby. Her eyes softened slightly. I'm sorry, Malik. I didn't mean to drag you into this. The weight of her words settled heavily on him. He thought about his family, how they had no idea what kind of danger they were in because of him. What do I do now? He asked. Daniels hesitated, then reached for a notepad on the bedside table. She scribbled something down and handed it to him. There's a journalist I trust, Rebecca Cole. She's been investigating the Iron Fangs for years. If anyone can use that drive, it's her. Malik pocketed the note, his mind racing. Before he could say anything else, Daniels gripped his arm. Be careful who you trust, Malik. The people on that list will do anything to protect themselves. Anything. He nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. On his way out, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was bigger than he could handle. The next day, Malik decided to skip school. He couldn't focus on algebra while his life was hanging by a thread. Instead, he spent the morning researching Rebecca Cole at the library. She had a reputation for exposing corruption. Her name splashed across countless headlines. If anyone could help, it was her. But getting to her wouldn't be easy. She worked out of a secure office downtown, far from the prying eyes of the Iron Fangs. Malik didn't have the money for a cab, and taking the bus felt like too much of a risk. As he planned his next move, he noticed two men lingering near the library entrance. They were dressed casually, but their sharp eyes and tense postures gave them away. Malik recognized one of them from the SUV. His heart pounded as he ducked behind a bookshelf, peeking through the gaps to watch their movements. They were scanning the room, clearly looking for someone, looking for him. Malik slipped out through the emergency exit, setting off a loud alarm as he ran. The sound drew the men's attention, and he heard their footsteps pounding after him. He didn't look back. The streets blurred as he ran, his lungs burning and his legs threatening to give out. He darted into an alley, climbing over a dumpster and scaling a fire escape. From the roof, he watched as the men searched the alley below, their frustration evident. When they finally left, Malik sat on the rooftop, catching his breath. He pulled out the crumpled note from Daniels and stared at the name written there. He didn't have a choice. If he wanted to protect his family and himself, he had to get the flash drive to Rebecca Cole. But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. The Iron Fangs weren't going to give up, and the secrets on the drive were more dangerous than he had imagined. He wasn't just running for his life anymore. He was running for his family's survival. Malik arrived at Rebecca Cole's office building just as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the bustling city streets. He kept his hood up, his head low, and his nerves on edge. Every car that slowed and every passerby who glanced in his direction felt like a potential threat. The weight of the flash drive in his pocket was unbearable, a constant reminder of what was at stake. The building was imposing, its glass exterior reflecting the fading sunlight. Malik scanned the directory in the lobby, locating Cole's office on the 3rd floor. His hand shook as he pressed the elevator button. When the door slid open, he stepped inside, alone but suffocated by the weight of what he was about to do. Reaching the 3rd floor, he found her office at the end of the hallway. The name Rebecca Cole, investigative journalist, was etched onto a small plaque on the door. He hesitated, his heart racing. Was this the right move? What if she turned him away? What if she was already compromised? Steeling himself, he knocked. The door opened a crack, and a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s peered out. She looked him up and down, her expression skeptical. "Who are you?" I have something you need to see," Malik stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Cole didn't budge. "I don't take walk-ins, especially from kids. It's about the Iron Fangs," he blurted out. Her eyes narrowed, and she opened the door wider. "Come in. Quickly." The office was cluttered but organized, with stacks of papers, binders, and photos pinned to corkboards. A large map of the city hung on one wall, marked with colored pins and scribbled notes. Malik recognized some of the locations, hotspots for gang activity. Cole gestured for him to sit, her demeanor serious. "Start talking. What do you know about the Iron Fangs?" Malik pulled a flash drive from his pocket and placed it on her desk. "This has everything. Names, connections, proof of what they're doing. It's why they're after me." Cole's eyes widened slightly as she picked up the drive. "Where did you get this?" I saved a police officer. She gave it to me before she passed out. She said they'd kill us if they found it." Cole plugged the drive into her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. As she opened the files, her expression shifted from curiosity to shock. This is huge. Politicians, cops, business leaders, they're all in bed with the Iron Fangs. This could bring the whole operation down." Malik felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly extinguished by Cole's next words. "Do you realize what kind of danger you're in? They won't stop until they get this back." "I know," he said quietly. "But I didn't know where else to go." Cole leaned back, studying him. "You did the right thing coming here. But this isn't over. The people on this list will do whatever it takes to protect themselves. You need to keep your head down." Before Malik could respond, a sudden crash outside the office made them both jump. Cole moved to the window, pulling the blinds aside just enough to peek out. "Damn it," she muttered. "They're here." Panic surged through Malik. "How did they find me?" "They probably followed you," Cole said, her voice grim. "We need to get out of here. Now!" She grabbed the laptop and the flash drive, shoving them into a bag. Pulling on a jacket, she motioned for Malik to follow her. They slipped out the back door of the office and into a narrow alley. The sound of footsteps and voices echoed behind them. Malik's heart raced as he and Cole darted through the maze of alleys and side streets, trying to stay ahead of their pursuers. After what felt like an eternity, they ducked into an abandoned warehouse. Cole pulled out her phone and made a call, speaking in hushed tones. "I need an extraction. Now! 2 of us. No questions." She hung up and turned to Malik. "I have a safe house. We'll go there until I can figure out how to get this information to the right people." Malik nodded, though his mind was spinning. He thought handing over the flash drive would be the end of his involvement. Instead, it felt like he was sinking deeper into a web he couldn't escape. As they waited in the shadows, Malik's thoughts turned to his family. His mother, Layla, Jermaine, did the Iron Fangs know about them? Were they safe? The thought of his actions putting them in danger made his chest tighten. "Hey," Cole said, snapping him out of his thoughts. "I know this is a lot, but you're doing something important. This could change everything." Malik nodded, though her words felt hollow in the face of the danger closing in around them. He didn't want to be a hero. He just wanted to survive and keep his family safe. A black car pulled up outside the warehouse, its headlights off. Cole motioned for Malik to follow her as they slipped out and climbed into the back seat. As the car sped away, Malik glanced out the window, watching the city blur into darkness. He didn't know where they were going or what would happen next, but one thing was clear: there was no turning back now. The safe house was nothing like Malik had expected. It was a modest, nondescript apartment on the outskirts of the city, nestled in a quiet neighborhood where no one asked questions. The driver dropped them off without a word, and Cole led Malik inside, locking the door behind them. The space was sparse but functional: a couch, a table, and a small kitchen. A laptop and a pile of papers sat on the coffee table, evidence that Cole had been using the place as a base for her investigations. Malik sank onto the couch, exhaustion finally catching up to him. Cole didn't waste time. She opened her bag, pulled out her laptop, and began transferring the files from the flash drive to a secure cloud server. "We need to make sure this information is backed up. If something happens to me, or to this drive, we can't let it disappear." Malik nodded, though the implications made his stomach churn. "What happens now? I mean, you've got the files. Can't you just send them to the cops or something?" Cole looked up from her screen, her expression hard. "The cops? Malik, some of the people on this list are the cops. We can't trust anyone in the system until we have enough leverage to make this public." Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. He had always known the system was flawed, but hearing it laid out so bluntly made the danger feel even more real. "Then who do we give it to?" he asked. "I have contacts, journalists, whistleblowers, people who've been waiting for a chance like this. But getting this to them won't be easy. The Iron Fangs are watching everything." She hesitated, then added, "And we don't have much time." Malik's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" Cole sighed, leaning back in her chair. "The Iron Fangs won't stop until they find us. And when they do, they'll make sure no one ever hears about this. We need to move fast." As she spoke, Malik's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, his heart sinking when he saw Jermaine's name on the screen. "Hello?" Malik answered, trying to keep his voice steady. "Malik, where the hell are you?" Jermaine's voice was sharp, angry. "Mom's freaking out. Some guys came by the house asking about you. Said you owe them something." Malik's blood ran cold. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing. But they didn't look like they were joking around, Malik. You need to come home and fix this." "I can't," Malik said, his voice barely above a whisper. Jermaine's frustration boiled over. "What do you mean you can't? They're threatening us, Malik. Mom's scared out of her mind. Layla's crying. Whatever you've gotten yourself into, you need to get out of it. Now!" The line went dead before Malik could respond. He stared at the phone in his hand, guilt crashing over him like a wave. "They went to my house," he said, his voice shaky. "They threatened my family." Cole frowned, her fingers pausing over the keyboard. "I'm sorry, Malik. I knew this would happen eventually, but I was hoping we'd have more time. I have to go back," he said, standing abruptly. "I can't let them hurt my family." "No," Cole said firmly. That's exactly what they want. If you go back now, they'll use you to get the files, and then they'll kill you, and probably your family too. Malik clenched his fists, torn between his fear for his family and the cold logic of Cole's words. So what am I supposed to do? Just sit here while they terrorize my mom and Layla? Cole stood, placing a hand on his shoulder. We'll figure this out. But rushing in without a plan will only make things worse. Trust me. Malik wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. He sank back onto the couch, his mind racing. As Cole returned to her laptop, Malik's thoughts spiraled. He thought about his father, who had disappeared years ago. His mother never talked about it, but Malik had overheard enough to piece together the truth. His father had crossed the Iron Fangs and paid the price. Was Malik destined for the same fate? Would his family suffer because of him, just like they had before? The sound of Cole's typing brought him back to the present. She was working tirelessly, her focus unwavering. Watching her, Malik felt a spark of determination. He couldn't let fear paralyze him. He had to do something. Can we use the files to make them back off? Malik asked suddenly. Cole looked up, considering his question. Maybe. If we can leak just enough information to make them nervous, it might buy us some time. But it's risky. They'll know it came from us. Then let's do it, Malik said, his voice steady. If it keeps my family safe, it's worth the risk. Cole hesitated, then nodded. All right. I'll prepare a small leak, something that points to their operations without exposing everything. But once this goes live, they'll come after us harder than ever. Malik swallowed his fear and nodded. I'm ready. For the next few hours, they worked together, crafting a carefully worded leak and sending it to a trusted contact in the media. When it finally went live, the response was immediate. Social media lit up with speculation and outrage as the leaked information spread. The Iron Fangs were implicated in drug trafficking, extortion, and political corruption. It wasn't the whole story, but it was enough to draw attention and to put pressure on the gang. As the news spread, Malik's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Jermaine. Whatever you did, it's working. Those guys left. But be careful. They're not happy. Relief washed over Malik, but it was short-lived. He knew this was only a temporary victory. The Iron Fangs wouldn't let this go, and the real battle was just beginning. Cole closed her laptop, her expression grim. You were brave today, Malik. But this fight is far from over. Malik nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. He had stepped into a war he didn't fully understand, but he was determined to see it through. Not just for himself, but for his family, and for everyone who had suffered at the hands of the Iron Fangs. The leak had created a firestorm. News outlets were picking up the story, and hashtags tied to the Iron Fangs began trending. People were demanding answers, and for the first time, Malik felt like he had struck a real blow against the gang. But with that small victory came an overwhelming sense of unease. The Iron Fangs wouldn't just sit back and watch their empire crumble. They'd retaliate. Cole worked tirelessly, coordinating with her network of contacts to ensure the leaked information continued to spread. She had already received a few threats, anonymous messages warning her to back off, but she dismissed them with the nonchalance of someone used to living in the crosshairs. Malik, on the other hand, was unraveling. He paced the small apartment, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios. His family was safe for now, but how long would that last? And what about him? Every time he heard a car outside or footsteps in the hall, he tensed, expecting the Iron Fangs to burst in and finish the job. You need to focus, Cole said, not looking up from her laptop. Panicking won't help anyone. I'm not panicking, Malik shot back, though his shaking hands betrayed him. I don't know how you do this. How do you live like this? Cole paused, her fingers hovering over the keys. You learn to compartmentalize. You focus on what you can control and let go of the rest. Fear is just another weapon they use against you. Don't let them win. Her words were logical, but they didn't make him feel any less trapped. Malik sat down, trying to steady his breathing. He thought about his mother, Germaine, and Layla. He thought about how much they had already endured because of him. And he thought about his father, the man he barely remembered, whose mistakes had cast a long shadow over their lives. Did you ever lose anyone because of this? Malik asked quietly. Cole looked at him, her expression softening. Yes, she said after a long pause. My sister? She was a whistleblower, like me. She tried to expose corruption in her company, and they silenced her for it. That's why I do this, so no one else has to pay that price. Her answer hung heavy in the air, a stark reminder of the stakes. Malik nodded, understanding her resolve, but still grappling with his own. Hours passed, the tension in the apartment thickening with every minute. Malik tried to distract himself by scrolling through his phone, but the constant flood of news about the Iron Fangs only made him more anxious. Then the knock came. It was soft but deliberate, echoing through the quiet apartment. Malik froze, his heart hammering in his chest. Cole moved quickly, grabbing a small handgun from a drawer and motioning for him to stay back. Who is it? She called out, her voice steady. Rebecca Cole? A man's voice replied. I'm Detective Harmon. I need to speak with you about the recent leak. Malik's eyes widened. A cop? Was this a trap? Cole hesitated, then gestured for Malik to hide in the bedroom. He obeyed, pressing his ear to the door as she unlocked the main entrance. What do you want, Detective? Cole asked, her tone wary. I'm here to help, Harmon said. Your leak stirred up a lot of dust, and not everyone in the department is happy about it. But some of us want to see these bastards taken down. I need to know what you have. Malik's instincts screamed at him to stay hidden, but he couldn't ignore the possibility that Harmon might be an ally. He pushed the door open slightly, peeking out. The detective was tall and middle-aged, with a tired but earnest expression. How do we know we can trust you? Cole asked. You don't, Harmon admitted. But I've been investigating the Iron Fangs for years. I've seen what they're capable of. If you have evidence that can bring them down, I'll risk my career to make sure it sees the light of day. Cole studied him for a long moment, then stepped aside to let him in. Malik emerged from the bedroom, his eyes narrowing as he sized up the detective. Harmon looked at him and nodded. You must be Malik. I've heard about you. You're braver than most adults I know. Malik didn't respond, unsure if the compliment was genuine or manipulative. Cole crossed her arms. What do you propose, Detective? We go public, Harmon said. All of it. Names, documents, everything. The media is already on this story, and if we hit them with the full scope of the corruption, they won't be able to bury it. But we have to act fast. The longer we wait, the more time they have to cover their tracks. And what happens to us? Malik asked, his voice sharp. You think they'll just let us walk away after that? They won't, Harmon admitted. But I can offer you protection. Witness relocation, safe houses, whatever it takes. I can't promise it'll be easy, but it's better than running forever. Cole glanced at Malik, her expression conflicted. This is your call, Malik. You've already risked everything to get this far. If you want to walk away now, I'll respect that. Malik looked between them, his mind racing. He thought about the weight of the flash drive, the sacrifices his family had made, and the people who would continue to suffer if the Iron Fangs weren't stopped. I'm tired of running, he said finally, his voice steady. Let's do it. Harmon nodded, determination flashing in his eyes. Then let's make history. The three of them got to work, preparing the files for a massive public release. Cole contacted her network, ensuring the story would reach as many people as possible. Harmon made calls to trusted colleagues, quietly assembling a team to protect them once the storm hit. As the first wave of files went live, Malik felt a strange mix of fear and hope. He had started this journey as a scared kid trying to protect his family, but now he was part of something bigger, a fight for justice, for accountability, for change. And though the road ahead was uncertain, he knew he wasn't alone. For the first time, Malik felt like he had a chance to not just survive, but to make a difference. The files detonated like a bomb. Within hours, news outlets across the country were reporting on the Iron Fangs, exposing their deep ties to drug trafficking, money laundering, and political corruption. Names were named, and the public reaction was swift and furious. Protests erupted outside government offices, and social media platforms exploded with demands for justice. For Malik, the fallout was both exhilarating and terrifying. He watched from the safe house as the story unfolded, his name absent from the reports, but his fingerprints all over the chaos. Cole and Detective Harmon had done their jobs well, ensuring the leak couldn't be traced back to him or his family. Still, Malik couldn't shake the feeling that the Iron Fangs would figure it out. Harmon returned to the safe house later that evening, his face lined with exhaustion. "It's working," he said, dropping into a chair. "Internal Affairs is launching an investigation. A few of the names we exposed are already under arrest." Cole gave a satisfied nod. "Good. But it's not over yet. The Fangs will fight back. They always do. Let them," Harmon said grimly. "They're cornered now, and desperate people make mistakes." Malik sat quietly, his mind racing. For all the victories they'd achieved, the weight of what they'd done was crushing. Families like his would be safer, but the Iron Fangs wouldn't disappear overnight. And for now, they still posed a very real threat. As the night wore on, Malik's phone buzzed. It was a text from Jermaine. "Mom says thank you, even though she doesn't know what you did. We're okay now. Stay safe." Malik felt a lump in his throat as he read the message. His family was safe, for now. That was all that mattered. But the text also reminded him of why he had started this fight in the first place. The world was full of people like his mother and Layla, innocent, hard-working, and powerless against forces like the Iron Fangs. If Malik walked away now, he'd be leaving them vulnerable. "I need to go back," he said suddenly, breaking the silence. Cole looked at him sharply. "Back where?" "To the neighborhood," Malik said, his voice firm. "I know the Fangs are still out there, and I know they're angry. But they've already lost a lot of power because of this. If I don't stand up to them now, they'll just rebuild and come back stronger." Harmon frowned. "That's a dangerous move, Malik. They won't forget your face. If you confront them, you're putting a target on your back." "I already have one," Malik said. "But I'm not just doing this for me. I'm doing it for my family, for my neighbors, for everyone they've hurt. If I don't face them, who will?" Cole studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right. But you're not going alone." The next day, Harmon arranged for a low-profile meeting with community leaders from Malik's neighborhood. They gathered in a small, dimly lit church basement, their faces a mix of anger and determination. These were the people who had lived under the Iron Fang's shadow for years, who had seen friends and family fall victim to their violence. Malik stood at the front of the room, nervous but resolute. He told them everything about the files, the leak, and the growing cracks in the Iron Fang's foundation. He admitted his role in it all, though he left out the parts that could endanger his family. "We have a chance," he said, his voice steady. "They're weaker now than they've ever been. But if we don't stand together, they'll come back. We have to fight them, not just with words, but with action. We have to show them we're not afraid anymore." The room fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Then an older woman stood up, her face lined with years of struggle. "He's right," she said. "We've been scared for too long. It's time to take back what's ours." One by one, the others voiced their agreement. By the end of the meeting, they had formed a plan, a community watch group, a hotline for reporting gang activity, and a network of safe spaces for anyone who needed protection. Malik felt a surge of hope as he watched the group come together. For the first time, he realized that this fight wasn't just his. It belonged to everyone who had suffered under the Iron Fang's rule. In the weeks that followed, the community began to push back. Graffiti marking the Fang's territory was painted over. Anonymous tips led to police raids on their stash houses. And when gang members tried to intimidate residents, they found themselves outnumbered and outmaneuvered. The Iron Fangs fought back, of course. But their power was crumbling, and Malik could see it in their desperate, disorganized actions. One night, Malik and Cole were walking back to the safe house when a car pulled up beside them. Malik tensed, ready to run, but the driver rolled down the window and nodded at him. "Keep it up, kid," the man said. "You're making a difference." Malik watched as the car drove away, a strange mix of fear and pride swelling in his chest. By the time the dust settled, the Iron Fangs were a shadow of their former selves. The leaks had sparked widespread investigations, and the community's resistance had forced them to retreat. Malik knew the fight wasn't over. There would always be new threats, new challenges. But he also knew that he and his community had proven something important. Together, they were stronger than their fear. As he stood on his front porch one evening, watching the sun set over the neighborhood, Malik felt a quiet sense of peace. He had started this journey as a scared boy, desperate to protect his family. Now, he was something more, a leader, a fighter, a symbol of resilience. And though the road ahead was uncertain, Malik knew he was ready for whatever came next.